In today's episode, I'm with David Fitzpatrick. He's the marketing director of Modus Create. And essentially, Modus Create is a consulting firm that helps companies to succeed in the digital future. Simple as that. And that's why we're talking about digital marketing, digital growth today with David. And I'm pleased to have him on the show. Welcome.
Thanks very much. Happy to be here.
Very cool. So give us an overview, maybe, a 360 overview of what Modus Create is all about.
Cool. Modus Create is a digital product agency. And what that means is we build software that helps customers of ours, our clients, redefine interactions with their customers, increase their organizational maturity so they can actually build software and secure those applications in the market. We're all in this big trend where there's a pretty simple thesis about the future, which is that there's going to be more software, not less, in the future. That is how brands interact with customers, right? Your first, last, and middle touch points are often software driven. And that's the way that the economy functions these days, right? So in order to set brands up for success, the future means they need to know how to effectively develop, scale, and deploy software. We're a consulting firm that helps with that.
Very cool. Who would be coming to Modus Create? Like what types of businesses, raise their hand and say, we need sort of somebody who's guiding at that in that process?
Yeah, I mean, based on my intro, I suppose I could say all businesses, right? Because everyone needs to differentiate and focus on customer capture and retention through digital channels. But really, there's two big segments that we see. The first of which is Global 1000 brands. So firms that have typically worked with the big five consulting shops. And we work with the big five. We're obviously not a direct competitor to them, but these large multinational firms often need digital native super boutique agencies to help move very fast and that can manage the execution of actual software projects. So that's where we work with some of the largest brands in the world. And then another segment that we work pretty extensively with is the US mid-market. So I'll say 50 to 500 million in revenue. Those are companies where they need to deploy new features, deploy new products. They have grown via mergers and acquisitions and have very complex different development teams and code bases and multiple products all rolled up under one brand. And they need to reorient their business oftentimes to be digital first, right? And we can help sort through that to reorg, to re-architect, and then help to ship those new features and up their development capacity.
What I'm interested about is, you mentioned mid-market companies, global 1000, like who would be raising their hand within those companies and says, okay, we need a partner like Modus Create? Is that like a head of digital, or like who's bringing you folks in?
It's actually a mix of different things. So, at the highest level, because we're a consulting company, referrals and our name is very important. So oftentimes for mid-market firms, we see that business advisors are very senior executives on a sort of one-to-one basis with our executive. Our own executives are the sort of referring entity, right? Or someone who's on the board of advisors. We need a consulting company that can do X. Who do you know? And that's where we're entered. Right. In some of the larger firms, it takes on two different shades. The first being via our channel partnerships. So we're AWS, Ionic Framework, Atlassian, AHA, so a number of different technology partnerships with some massive names in tech that across the product development lifecycle. And in that case, it's sometimes functional managers, so directors or VPs that need a very specific outcome that bring us in because we're differentiated in those partner ecosystems by being full service. And then the last space to your exactly what you hit on there is that sort of chief digital officer and the digital services division, as we've called it. One of our co-founders, Pat Sheridan, spoken pretty extensively about the creation of the digital services division within global brands as a way that companies can kind of insource the innovation agency within, though it may be a separate P&L, it's within the organization, right? An internal digital agency to help innovation initiatives. So ship new products, identify new markets, evolve the way that the business works. And a lot of times for the Global 1000, those companies are operating just outside of the day-to-day business and those innovation labs are reporting back to lines of business, and they need help from consultants like us. So we do a lot of work with shifting huge digital initiatives. I know we've talked to three just within the last month of very large global companies that are looking to take traditional in-store customer interactions, right, shift them to digital, and they need an outside expert to help realize that vision.
Super interesting. You know, in our brief pre-chat, we touched up on the fact that obviously next to, you know, referrals and partnerships and those big channel partners, also inbound and ABM is starting to, you know, get momentum with you guys. Maybe tell us a little bit how they coexist. Like, you know, how do you think about like inbound, maybe even content generation? What role does the website play? Maybe tell us a little bit about that next to those, you know, massive channels of referral and partnerships.
Yeah, I think so. We're in a very lucky position. I've been here about 3.5 years, and even before I had joined, Modus Create has a very long history of extremely strong technical thought leadership. And so content has always played a role in demonstrating our qualifications, right? And part of my role in leading our marketing department is to continue to shift that conversation towards the content that buyers would care about, right? What is the business impact? We demonstrating that we clearly understand the context of wider software development, right? Because that's how we approach it. That's what makes us so good is it's not signing an SOW to ship features. It's taking a step back to understand context, users, what we need to build, what does success look like, right? So doing that shift in content, and the macro theme there is really to the website is the house for that. You know, that's kind of the hub of our marketing, right? As with many firms, and that's because the greater job of content is to demonstrate our qualifications. Right? We know what we're talking about. It is a qualifier. There's that stat, and I can never remember the percentage. It's like 60 to 80% of purchasing decision is already made before they fill out a form or before they go to talk to you, right? And those content touch points upstream are that's exactly what we're trying to influence and convey that information ahead of time, right? So content becomes very large for us. Inbound in sort of the SaaS or software model is not as relevant, though there are elements, I'm speaking from my marketing chair, where some of those channel partnerships I talked about, those are very explicit needs with functional managers within our prospective client companies. And that does open us up to the ability to serve messages to them or to serve content to them in the middle or bottom of the funnel to do demand gen in that traditional sense. But by and large, this is the content as a play on demonstration of qualifications rather than a traditional inbound. And we had talked, you mentioned as well, to wrap it up on ABM, right? And that's kind of my shift. I've spoken on a number of different target firms, a number of different roles within those firms and without those firms, if it's a board of advisors, right? And so I think ABM and personalization is really that's the next big mountain to get over for us, right? Because we have we can have several different moving parts, 3 to 4 target personas within 2 to 3 types and sizes of companies, all with different needs, goals, and things that keep them up at night. Pushing to a place where, you know, ABM looks like target accounts with A, B, C, D, different criteria, certain roles within them, and then using either digital tools or our own internal content development and marketing team to customize the messages, the landing pages, the ads that are served against those is the next thing for us to tackle.
Interesting. Do you see the website then, with what you were describing, do you see the website evolving to something that is actually going to be driving business, or it's going to be that upper funnel sort of tool that, you know, educates, or do you see it actually driving, you know, moving forward, like leads and business for the company?
Yeah, I think it can absolutely be both. Its primary role, to your point, is I think going to be upper funnel, just based on the way that customers buy consulting services. I don't, while there's obviously shift to digital, COVID acceleration, all of these things, it's a one-to-one recommendation based primarily space. So it is going to be a lot of upper funnel, but there definitely is room with that customization I'm talking about, with the more relevant content and with greater refinement on client success stories and our expertise within certain industries, that it can more directly, the website specifically can more directly influence our bottom line.
Super interesting. I would love to switch gears a little bit and sort of pick your brain on more generic topics within marketing. What do you find to be, especially sort of, you know, in a marketing arena that is obviously heavily driven by partnerships? Like, what do you find to be the challenge when you want to bring in innovation? Let's say, right, you're sitting in the marketing chair and you want to bring innovation. Like, what is typically the challenges that arise?
In my personal experience, and this is even beyond my current role at Modus, but it's really about defining goalposts, right? Um, Ideas are cheap is the old saying. A lot of people can bring new ideas, but there's a very large gap right from the new campaign idea or the new target to go after and the lowest tactic, which I'll say is, you know, the one post on LinkedIn that's part of the greater campaign. There's campaign building, target definition, all of the supporting tactics and strategy that are defined, as well as what does success look like? Because just accomplishing the new initiative or rolling out the new landing page or launching the TikTok channel for your brand or whatever it is, just accomplishing that is certainly a qualitative win. But then what does success look like on that platform? What is the goal? What strategic pillar of the firm is this aligned back to, right? Which then informs the KPIs. Is the launching of Instagram stories simply an awareness play? Is it engagement from our current employees and a way to, right, affect employee retention and happiness? Is it lead gen, right? Defining all of those things, and then what the campaign and initiative structure looks like. There's a lot of work to be done, right? That's I think a big gap that's often missed when folks come with ideas. So it's I guess it's two things, as it's the measurement and making sure that we're all aligned on what the value to the business is and where it supports quantitative and qualitative, and then also making sure that we have the right people with the right skills to translate the one sentence abstract into, you know, a year-long multi-channel marketing initiative.
And how that maybe ties into this? How does like somebody like yourself think about ROI on marketing at the moment? Because obviously, when there's a lot of upper funnel initiatives and when there's partnerships driving clients, like, you know, how does somebody like yourself think about ROI of the marketing function?
Yeah, we had the benefit of working with an outside advisor who brought in a lot of really good frameworks to the way that we define marketing, and I start with first I started at the company level, at Modus Create, at the brand level, right? What are the strategic pillars of the company that we need to support? And for us, there were primarily three. So that thought leadership I talked about, and awareness of the brand, which are very closely interlinked. There's driving revenue, the classic demand gen, marketing and sales interplay, right? And there's also, for us, because we're a consulting company with a global workforce of technology talent, the third one for us was making sure that we're able to hire and retain the best people in the world. And so starting at a very high level, right, those strategic pillars that marketing supports are key. They're at the very base of the company, the foundation of the company, right? And then making sure that we're aligned on where my team and my efforts are spent within those three buckets. So even a rough percentage breakdown, right? And then building a marketing plan for the year or for 2 years against those different priorities to make sure that we have initiatives, tactics, right, down to the very minute level, sometimes laddering back up all the way to company pillars. So that framework's been really, really helpful, and it's distilled really to a page, right? Company strategy down to the mission statement and what the marketing team is doing, down to how the initiatives fit back into those strategic pillars, right? Down to campaign ideas. And so we start to get this, this sort of pyramid of activities, and that all ladders back up. And I keep saying that because that's a phrase we use a lot in here, but making sure that down to the YouTube video that gets released Thursday, the LinkedIn post that we're putting out on Friday afternoon, to the flyer we helped design for the internal employee engagement initiative, that all ladder back up and are spent, and time is spent in the right percentage breakdown against the different priorities of the company and where we're supposed to be spending our time, right? It prevents people from getting distracted. And then it also make sure that we're always working in service of the greater company success.
It really comes to show that you're very like framework driven and a very structural approach within Modus Create. Super interesting. I want to switch gears, right? And learn a little bit more about yourself. Like, given there's so much, marketing content out there, you mentioned ABM, for example, becoming a topic that is more important to you. Like, how do you educate yourself? Like, what is the places where you go, and what's your way of educating yourself and deep diving into those topics?
I try to consume a lot of competitors or some of the biggest brands in the world. I suppose that's a pretty rote answer, but what are the leaders who you think are amazing marketers, right? The Nikes of the world, or the factories of marketing talent like Procter and Gamble and its sub brands. What are those people doing? What are the brands doing? What can you see customer facing? I think that's a huge influence, and especially within our industry, right? That helps shape what I'm doing by looking at the big five consulting firms. How are they messaging terms like digital transformation, the way that they support global businesses to ship new products? That's a huge, very personal for me within my role at Modus Create, area to learn. The second thing is I do a lot of podcasts, listen to a lot of podcasts. One I really like, and I'll shout it out by name, is Jim Stengel's CMO podcast. He was Global Chief Marketing Officer at Procter and Gamble for many years, and now runs his own consulting company. He does a weekly session with really, really bigwig CMOs and leaders of marketing within brands, and hearing the differing perspectives, the different backgrounds that they come from, the different ways that they approach their job. I think is hugely influential, and that's been a real focus for me as well. Where in looking to grow a marketing team at Modus Create and to be in this sector, right, hearing the CMO level, senior VP of marketing level approach. How do they spend their time? What is their focus? How do they empower their team to succeed? How do they find the team? How do they break the team down? When do they make investments in headcount versus agency? All of these things are super important as Modus Create continues to scale up its marketing.
Very good. So let's wrap it up with a couple of rapid fire questions. Are you ready for those?
Yes, I am.
Very good. What's the last book that you read?
The last book that I read. That's a good, I'm trying to think. Give me a sec. It was, I believe it was called, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I was listening to Dan Carlin's Hardcore History. It's Supernova in the East was his most recent series, and he drew a lot of quotes from Shanghai, 1933, Stalingrad on the Yangtze, which was about the Japanese occupation of Shanghai before and leading into the Second World War that happened in the West. So not exactly marketing related, but definitely a student of history. So I like to read about 6 to 8 history books a year, just for perspective, learning about things I never knew about, which that's certainly that portion of the conflict we were not taught about in school, right? Expand your horizons.
Very good. What's the one single thing that Modus Create is focused the most at the moment?
I think it is and will continue to always be, for a consulting company, what I'll just say is delivery excellence, right? Making sure that we have the organizational structure, leadership, account support, marketing and sales support where it's necessary to ensure that our folks on the ground at client sites can be successful, right? And that, of course, ties back to marketing in terms of customer retention and just brand health overall. Do clients enjoy working with us, and do they stick around? We're very fortunate at Modus Create because of the talent we have. Folks do, right? But that's always going to be a key focus for leadership, is making sure that our engineers on the front lines have what they need to succeed.
If there would be no boundaries in technology, what would be the one thing that you want to have fixed for your role today?
No boundaries in technology. I think it would be some sort of holographic team meeting. My team is 7 people, and I think we're in 6 countries across the world. And we excel in asynchronous remote work. but for large planning sessions at the yearly, quarterly, or massive campaign scale, I really think nothing replaces right now the whiteboard. And we've gotten close with Miro and some of these other tools. In fact, Modus is partners with, which are great. But the 1 to 2 times a year, especially as we onboard a bunch of new people, it's great to just get together as close as we can to in person. So I would do the Star Wars thing and project everyone into a room if I could.
What's the last thing that kept you awake at night about the company?
Going back to listening to the podcast, I think it's making sure that the organization is growing in the right areas. Am I hiring and am I focusing budget, initiative, and my own time on oversight or direction in the key areas that we need to? To your point about content versus top of funnel versus inbound versus ABM, right? How do I finance those? How do I finance experts and SMEs against those different disciplines in marketing? Or do we bring in agencies? Or do we deprioritize this entirely for right now to shift it? Right. And so making sure that we have the right allocation to drive growth and to continue to be really marketing's core message, core role, driving growth and being a brand steward for the company. So making sure that we have the right people in the right places to be able to accomplish those things.
Cool. And the last question to wrap it up for the interview, I would be very curious if today would be your very first day with Modus Create, what's the one advice that you would give yourself?
I really like this approach. I heard someone interviewed a while ago, and he said he goes through a thought exercise every 18 months where he fires himself, and he will carve out about 4 hours of his day to plan. If I started this role again, what would I do? I think I would say 2 things come to mind originally, and it ties right back into what kept me up at night. I think the first thing would be immediately map out a plan to sort of add talented lieutenants against subject matter capabilities that I knew that we needed, right? So having a senior to middle management layer of very qualified folks who could run with their own initiatives, mapping that hiring plan and beginning to identify those people would be a great first thing. And I think the second thing would be, we're blessed. I have a very great relationship with our lead salespeople and our folks who work in solution design, which gets clients what they need to buy from us, right? Meeting their needs with an actual engagement that they can pay for. But I think building those pipelines and defining them better would have been the other thing I would have focused on. It probably took a year to 18 months until we had the maturity on the sales side and on the marketing side to realize we needed to open up those pathways, but to define things like SLAs, regular check-ins, when we do co-planning, making sure we're on the same page with campaigns, and sales is able to handle maybe the influx of activity or leads, good or bad, that we're giving them, right? And making sure that what they're seeing in sales calls is reflected in the content development calendar on my side, or new ideas for events to go to or new targets, right? It would be firming up those pathways very early on so that we had something defined in writing that would promote collaboration and alignment.
Very good. I want to wrap it up, right? I really appreciate that you took the time, David, today with us to give us an insight about Modus Create. Maybe the very last thing, if somebody would be forgetting all that we discussed about Modus Create, what's the one thing that they should remember?
I would say Modus Create has the best collection of technical talent on the planet. If you remember nothing else, remember that.
Very good. David, thanks for being a part of Pathmark Presents.
Thanks very much, Lucas.